The cold came first. A brutal kind of cold, the kind that didn't just sit on your skin but clawed through muscle and marrow, straight into your bones. Wind howled through the trees like a warning, bending them backward, thrashing the forest canopy. The sky above was a violent bruise, smeared with clouds, torn open now and then by flashes of lightning that lit the world in painful, blinding blue. And she was running. Her breath came in short, jagged gasps, each one slicing through her throat like broken glass. Mud clung to her feet, sucking her down, but she didn't stop. She couldn't. Her boots had given out miles ago, and now her bare feet were cut and bleeding, streaking the forest floor with her scent. Branches whipped at her arms, tore at her face. Her hair was wild, soaked, matted with rain and sweat and streaks of blood. Thunder cracked directly above her, so loud it rattled the ground beneath her steps. The storm wasn't just weather, it felt alive, like it wanted her to suffer. She stumbled. Fell. Landed hard on her palms, pain flaring in her wrists, knees digging into sharp rocks. But she pushed up again, shaking, gritting her teeth. Her legs screamed with each step. Her lungs burned. She didn't know how long she'd been running. She didn't know if she was still being chased. But she couldn't stop. Not now. Not when every instinct in her broken, battered body told her that if she paused, even for a second, they'd find her. And they'd finish what they started. Tears mixed with rain on her face, but she didn't cry. She couldn't afford to. Crying took energy. And she had almost none left. Her name was Elira. But to them? To the ones who hunted her? She was nothing. A mistake. A curse. They said she should never have been born. She tripped again, this time slamming into a low-hanging branch with a sharp grunt. Her shoulder cracked against bark, and she spun before hitting the ground. The impact knocked the air out of her. She curled, gasping. Her chest heaved. The world tilted. Trees loomed above her, blurred and menacing. Then, she felt it. That, thrum. Deep in her palm. She lifted her hand. Trembling. Drenched. And there it was. That faint shimmer. A glow. Silver. Soft. Alive. Her pulse raced. Her fingers curled, trying to hold onto it, grasp it, use it. But the light flickered. Dimmed. Faded. Gone. She squeezed her eyes shut, slammed her fist into the ground with a hoarse, aching cry. Why won't it come? It was there, it was always there, but it slipped through her like mist. Like smoke. She could feel it, but never control it. Not yet. Thunder boomed again. The ground shook. And beneath it, another sound. Closer. Lower. A growl. Not one. Several. Deep, snarling, guttural. She froze. Pressed herself against the cold, wet earth. Listening. Twigs snapped somewhere behind her. Then silence. Then more footsteps. Heavy ones. Booted. Deliberate. She dragged herself toward a fallen tree, crawling through mud and roots. Found a hollow space beneath its twisted trunk. She curled up inside, clutching her knees, shivering violently. Every breath sounded too loud. Every heartbeat thundered in her ears. A figure passed. Then another. Black cloaks. Hoods. Faces hidden. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. They were trained for this. Bloodhounds of the elders. Their noses would smell her, even through rain and filth. But something, maybe fate, maybe mercy, carried them past her hiding spot. She didn't breathe until the wind changed direction. Minutes ticked by. Maybe hours. Maybe seconds. She couldn't tell anymore. Her body was shutting down. Her fingers were numb. Her heartbeat was slowing. This is it, she thought. Maybe I'm not supposed to make it. She looked down at her palms again. They were stained red. With dirt. With blood. Hers. She wasn't even sure when the last cut had happened. Everything hurt. Everything was heavy. Her mind spiraled, back to the beginning. Back to her mother's face, pale and soft, whispering a name she didn't remember. Back to her first shift attempt, and the fire that exploded from her chest, searing the walls of the temple. Back to the elder's screams. The accusations. The exile. Unnatural. Untamed. Dangerous. They locked her away for months. Years, maybe. Time didn't mean much in that cell. And now they hunted her like a beast. Maybe she was one. Her eyes fluttered shut. She didn't want to die. But she didn't know how to live anymore, either. Not like this. Not in this body she couldn't trust. Not with this power that refused to obey. Not when even the moon had turned its face from her. A sob tore through her chest. Quiet. Shaky. I just want it to stop, she whispered. A gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying the sound of her voice into the night. No one answered. She didn't expect them to. She was alone. Utterly, completely alone. And yet, somewhere inside her, beneath the fear and fatigue and the endless ache of being unwanted, there was a flicker. A spark. The tiniest whisper of something that refused to die. Hope. If that spark still exists in you, if something inside you still aches for stories of love, survival, and impossible power, then this is where you belong. Right here, in the Alpha's Romance Library. Because this is only the beginning. And it's about to burn. The forest was holding its breath. No more growls. No more footsteps. Just the soft hiss of rain through leaves, and the brittle creak of branches shifting overhead. Elira blinked, the darkness pressing in like a weight. Her eyes stung. Her body screamed for rest. But something just beyond the edge of instinct, tightened in her chest. She wasn't alone. Not in the way she had been. Not anymore. It wasn't the scent of blood or the electric pull of danger that struck her first. It was the silence. The kind that didn't belong to the woods. A silence too still. Too intentional. Like the world itself was waiting. She strained to listen. And then, there it was. Footsteps. But not like before. Not the frenzied pursuit of hunters crashing through underbrush. Not the calculated tread of those who stalk prey. These steps were slow. Heavy. Deliberate. Like they belonged to someone who feared nothing, not the dark, not the storm, not even the gods watching above. She pushed herself up slightly, every muscle trembling. She could barely lift her head, her body a map of bruises and frostbite, but her instincts roared. Feral and primal. Fight. Flee. Or freeze. But then the wind shifted. And the scent hit her. Pine smoke. Steel. And something else. Something ancient. Her heartbeat quickened, not with fear this time. But with something colder. More uncertain. Recognition. The footsteps stopped just feet away from where she hid. Then a voice. Deep. Rough like gravel underfoot, but calm. Like a river that had carved its way through stone. You're bleeding. She jerked back instinctively, scrambling in the dirt, snarling. Don't touch me. A shadow moved. No threat. No rush. Just presence. And then he knelt. A tall figure, mostly hidden by a dark cloak soaked through with rain. The hood cast his face in shadow, except for the eyes. Gold. Not amber. Not hazel. But true, molten gold that shimmered even in the dull gray light. They weren't human eyes. They were wolf. Not feral. Not cruel. Just watching. Steady. Knowing. He tilted his head slightly, as if studying her pain, as if he'd seen it before. Lived it. Survived it. Elira, he said softly, like the name itself had weight. Like it wasn't just a label, but a memory he carried too. Her breath caught. No one had spoken her name like that in years. Not since, no. She didn't know him. She would have remembered. Wouldn't she? You don't remember me, do you? He asked. His tone wasn't accusing. It was quiet. Almost mournful. She squinted, rain blurring her vision. A face, half hidden, but, the scar. Faint. Diagonal across his left cheek, running just beneath the eye. A scar she'd seen before. In dreams. Or nightmares. She couldn't tell them apart anymore. And suddenly the space between them felt thinner. Like this wasn't the first time their paths had crossed. Only the first time she'd been awake for it. She staggered to her feet, shoulders raised, fingers curled. You're one of them, she spat. He didn't move. Didn't defend himself. Just looked at her with those ancient eyes. I'm not like them. She shook her head. You wear their crest. He lifted a hand, pushed the soaked cloak aside. The flash of lightning struck at just the right moment, and the symbol burned into her vision. The royal mark of the obsidian crown. Silver etched over black leather. 3 fangs curved around a flame. The mark of the ruling pack. The ones who'd tried to kill her. The ones who'd named her abomination. He saw her recoil, and his voice lowered, rougher now, more urgent. I wear it because I must. Not because I believe in them. She stared at him. Mud streaked her face. Her legs shook beneath her. She hated how she wanted to believe him. How badly she needed someone to not be a liar. Then his hand extended, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. You were never meant to die out here. She didn't take it. But she didn't run either. He moved closer, letting her see him fully now. The rain slid over his skin, dripping from his jawline. His cloak fell open, revealing broad shoulders, a chest layered in worn leather armor, and beneath it, runes inked into his skin, glowing faintly beneath the surface. Marks of the old blood. He was a born alpha. Not just any alpha. A king. And yet he knelt for her. Lightning flared again, casting the space between them in silver white. His face was drawn, serious, but not cold. There was pain in it. Scars that weren't visible. Shadows that hadn't come from the night. Elira's hands twitched. Her voice was hoarse. Why are you here? Because you are. That's not an answer. He exhaled through his nose. Steady. Measured. Then try this, he said, voice dropping to a near whisper. I came because something ancient stirred the moment your heart broke free of that cell. I came because every wolf in the kingdom felt the shift in the air. The power. Your power. She turned her face away. You're here to drag me back. No, he said. I'm here to make sure no one ever cages you again. And for the first time in days, maybe years, she hesitated. Not because she believed him. But because she wanted to. Badly. He stepped closer. She should have moved. Should have struck him. Should have screamed. But her legs refused to obey. He reached out, again, slower this time. His fingers brushed her arm, light, barely there. But where he touched her, warmth bloomed beneath her skin, deep and strange and terrifying. Her wolf stirred, ears alert. Not in warning, but in recognition. She sucked in a sharp breath, wrenching away. His voice was calm, but something deep vibrated in it now. Like the growl of a distant storm. Someone has to help you stand, Elira. If not me, who? She hated the answer that came to her mind. No one. Because there was no one left. No one else had come. Only him. And she didn't know if that made him her savior. Or her end. The rain had eased, but not stopped. The trees still wept. Elira sat with her back against a stone ridge, arms wrapped tight around herself. The man, this Alpha King, stood a few paces away, watching her with a patience she didn't trust. Not yet. Maybe not ever. He hadn't forced her to speak. Not even after she flinched from his touch. But the silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy. It crackled with things unsaid. She stared at the small flame he'd built between them. It burned low and blue, not from wood, but from some powder he'd sprinkled into the pit, a trick of his bloodline, maybe. A reminder that he wasn't just a man. That he wasn't just a wolf. That none of this was normal. Her fingers twitched again, that same flicker in her palms threatening to spark, then vanishing. Still useless. Still broken. She didn't know what he expected from her. And maybe that was the worst part of all, she wanted to ask. Wanted to believe his calm wasn't a mask. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. Not after everything. Not after them. Her eyes closed. And memory came like a blade. She was 11 the first time they made her stand in the circle. A ring of salt and ash, carved into the dirt with runes she didn't understand. Elders stood at the edges, cloaks fluttering. Her adoptive mother stood behind her, hands on her shoulders, grip tight. Shift, they said. She didn't know how. She tried. She screamed. She sobbed. Her body convulsed. Bones stretched and cracked, then snapped back again. Nothing. The elders looked unimpressed. One whispered, "It's like trying to shift a stone." Her mother's hand flew across her face. The sound of the slap rang louder than the wind. "You embarrass us," she hissed. "You're not one of us. You're something else. Something wrong." Elira had dropped to her knees, cheek burning. Not from the slap, but from the truth in her mother's voice. Because even then, she knew it too. Years passed. Each full moon, the same trial. Each time, the same failure. Her body refused the change. Her blood boiled. Her veins pulsed with power, different power, but it never translated. Never obeyed. At 13, they stopped letting her join the rituals. At 14, they stopped letting her speak. At 15, she started hearing the voices. Whispers in the trees. In the dark. In her bones. "You don't belong here," they said. "You're not theirs." And in the distance, always, a woman's voice, soft, humming, singing words she didn't understand but felt deep in her marrow. Her real mother, maybe. The one she killed. That's what they said, anyway. She remembered the first time she overheard it. Two elders talking near the ceremonial well. One of them said it like it was fact. Her mother died screaming. The child clawed its way out. Her birth killed her. "It's a sign," the other replied. "That girl was born to end something." She ran that night. Into the woods. Barefoot. Bleeding. The same woods she now sat in as a grown woman. Except now, the girl was gone. Only the fury remained. Her eyes opened again. The Alpha hadn't moved. Still watching her. Still waiting. She wasn't sure what he saw in her. She was half-starved. Torn. Angry. Shaking. But his gaze wasn't pity. It was something else. Like he was recognizing her. Like he'd always known this moment would come. Her voice cracked when it finally emerged. "They hated me." His brow lifted, but he didn't interrupt. "I didn't understand why," she said, staring into the blue flame. "I never hurt anyone. Not on purpose. But they treated me like I was a ticking bomb. She glanced at her hand. Flexed her fingers. They weren't wrong. He stepped closer. The shadows shifted around him as he moved. Like the forest itself adjusted to accommodate him. She noticed it then. Faint scars across his knuckles. A gash, half faded, running along his collarbone beneath the damp shirt. And one scar, deep, ugly, at the base of his neck. He'd seen battle. Many. She met his eyes. They did this to you? He didn't flinch. Didn't look away. He simply nodded. They tried to chain me, he said. The moment I disagreed with the council. When I refused the mate they picked for me. When I started asking why our traditions were built on fear instead of truth. Elira's breath hitched. So, what? You ran? I fought, he said simply. Then I ran. A pause. And then I came back. Stronger. Smarter. Alone. She stared at him, trying to read between the lines. He wasn't boasting. There was too much pain behind his words. So why help me? She asked. You don't know me. He crouched slowly, arms resting on his knees. Their faces were close now. Close enough that she could see the rain still caught in his lashes. See the flicker of something tender behind the strength. I didn't help you, he said, voice low. You did. No, he corrected gently. You helped me. Once. A long time ago. She blinked. What are you talking about? You wouldn't remember. You were small. I was half dead. Hunted. You found me bleeding in a hollow. Gave me half your bread. Said nothing. Just sat beside me. Then left. He smiled faintly. And I survived. Because of you. She searched his face, desperate for the memory, but it was like chasing smoke. Still, the feeling was there. A thread connecting them. Thin. Frayed. But real. Their fingers brushed. Not deliberate. Not dramatic. But the spark it lit between them, silver. Instant. Alive. She gasped. So did he. Their hands recoiled, but neither looked away. She stared at her palm. The power was back. Just a flicker. But real. And it hadn't burned her. Not this time. His voice was raw. You feel it too? She nodded. Barely. And in that moment, beneath the trees, with their breath mingling and the storm finally dying above them. Something shifted. Not in the world. In them. The flame between them had gone out. Not from wind. Not from rain. It simply vanished, as if something greater had decided they no longer needed it. Neither of them moved at first. The air between them still held the silver spark. That touch. That impossible connection that wasn't just blood or instinct, but something older. Wilder. He stood first. Not abruptly. Not as a command. More like a quiet decision. A shift in the rhythm of the forest around them. We don't have much time, he said. She stayed where she was, body tense. Time for what? His gaze didn't waver. To show you what you are. Elira didn't answer. Couldn't. Because a part of her already knew. Not the whole truth. Not the why or how. But something in her bones, deeper than muscle, deeper than memory, recognized that tone. That urgency. She rose, slowly, her legs sore, her breath still shaky. But she followed. Not because she trusted him. But because the path they walked wasn't his. It was hers. The forest changed as they moved. The trees grew wider. Older. Bark thick with moss and time. The rain eased to a mist, and even that seemed to float differently here. As if the very air held memory. Magic. They passed stones split in two, ancient carvings etched into their faces. Some crumbled. Others still burned faintly beneath the surface with symbols she didn't recognize, but which stirred something in her chest. Recognition, again. A whisper she couldn't quite hear. The path narrowed. He stopped before a thick curtain of vines. Didn't touch them. Just looked at her. "You open it," he said. She hesitated. "Why?" "Because it only lets in the one it's waiting for." She stared at him. Looked back at the vines. Took a step. The moment her palm brushed the green, they shuddered. Not fell, shuddered. Like they exhaled. Like they were relieved. And then they parted. No wind. No noise. Just, opened. Beyond them was a grove. Not a clearing. A grove. Perfectly round. Tree trunks encircled the space like silent sentinels, each one scorched black halfway up, as if touched by fire long ago. And in the center. Stone. Massive. Upright. Obsidian dark, veined with light. A single pillar. And at its base, ruin. Ancient ruins, cracked platforms, broken altars, steps that led nowhere. And still, it hummed. With life. With memory. With power. Moonlight pierced through the canopy above, falling in perfect beams that painted the stone in silver. Elira stepped forward. Her breath hitched. Symbols bloomed across the surface of the stone, not carved, but emerged, as if responding to her presence. Curved lines. Spirals. Claw marks. Fire. And a shape. A wolf. Not drawn. Alive inside the stone, flickering like light trapped in crystal. She reached for it. Her fingers stopped just short of the surface. Her body trembled. Her palm tingled. The alpha stood at the edge of the grove. Watching. Silent. He didn't interfere. Didn't explain. This wasn't about him. It never had been. She stepped closer. The stone pulsed. A voice, inside her mind, not spoken, whispered, "When the flame and fawn align, the world will choose its fate." And then the world tilted. Not literally. But the moment her skin touched the stone, everything shifted. Her knees buckled. Her vision shattered. And she fell. Darkness. But not empty. It was full. Of sound. Of heat. Of screams. She saw herself, standing beneath a burning tree. The flames were silver, not red, not orange. They moved like water, devouring without consuming. And from the tree's roots, blood. Pouring. Rising. She turned, gasping, and a wolf stood behind her. But it wasn't a wolf. It was made of light. Of flame. Of moonlight, wind, shadow. Its eyes were hers. And then. Voices. Screaming. Elders. Their faces twisted, warped. Not human. Not wolf. Just fear. "She will ruin the balance," they cried. "She is the flame without a leash. She is the breaking of the old ways." Chains flew at her in the vision, made of shadow and salt and bone. She screamed. The wolf leapt in front of her, teeth bared. The chains burned away. And then. The vision fractured. She woke gasping. Sweat soaked her skin. Her heart pounded against her ribs. She wasn't in the grove anymore. She was inside stone walls. Warm. Dry. Torches flickered along the edges. The air smelled of pine, sage, and earth. Sanctuary. His sanctuary. She tried to sit, and hands caught her, gentle but firm. He was beside her. "You were out for hours," he said. "Your body's still catching up to your soul." She stared at him, dazed. What happened? You touched the memory stone. Is that what it was? He nodded once. One of the last. Her breath came shallow. I saw things. A tree. A wolf. Elders screaming. You saw what you needed to. That doesn't help. He didn't argue. Instead, he reached into a pouch at his side and pulled out a folded piece of parchment. He opened it. Symbols danced across the page, same ones she saw in the stone. Same ones in her dreams. Same ones that burned beneath her skin when her power tried to awaken. She touched one, barely, and the paper glowed. He whispered, more to himself than to her, you really are her. Her who? She asked, voice breaking. He looked at her, no longer guarded, no longer cautious. Just reverent. You are the flame. The child of the lost line. The one who wasn't supposed to live. And yet here you are. She backed away slightly. I didn't ask to be chosen. No, he said. Because you weren't. She blinked. You were born to choose. That silenced her. He stepped closer. There's a war coming, Elira. Not between packs. Not between bloodlines. But between ways. The old and the new. The obedient and the free. The flame and the void. She didn't answer. Couldn't. Not yet. But in her chest, that spark pulsed again. And this time, she didn't push it away. The first sign came with the crows. Not their usual cawing. This was louder. More frantic. A dozen of them, maybe more, black wings slicing the early morning sky above the sanctuary in jagged patterns, circling, screaming. Nature didn't lie. They were warning. And the wolves listened. The sanctuary stirred uneasily, guards moving to the walls, hands resting on blades that hadn't been drawn in years. Healers packed herbs they didn't yet need. Elders stood close to one another in anxious silence. Because something was coming. And it wore teeth. Elira felt it before she saw it. Her skin prickled. The power inside her, it didn't flare, didn't burn, but it listened. Like it was waiting, alert, bristling at the edges of her bones. The Alpha stood beside her in the inner chamber. His jaw was tight, his eyes shadowed. Not with fear. With restraint. His wolf was pacing beneath the surface. They know you're alive, he said, not turning to her. She stared out the window, the mountains in the distance now echoing with distant howls. Not mourning. Not wild. Calling. Who? She asked, though the answer came before he could give it. Them. The ones who tried to burn her out of existence. The ones who wanted her chained, buried, forgotten. The old packs. And they weren't alone. By midday, the first delegation arrived. No warning. No diplomacy. Just the heavy thunder of horses and claws. Armored wolves, men in blood-red cloaks, their scent reeking of aggression and dust. Their beta dismounted first, Ren, the loyal dog of Alpha Vorn, who ruled the southern front like a tyrant disguised in fur. Ren didn't bow. Didn't greet. He looked past the guards, past the sanctuary's protective runes, and said one thing, she's here. Elira stepped out on instinct, drawn by the shift in energy. The moment his eyes met hers, the air turned colder. The corners of his mouth curled upward, but there was no warmth in it. So the rumors were true. The cursed girl lives. The Alpha King stepped forward, placing himself between Elira and Ren. She has a name. Ren snorted. So do plagues. And then, louder, for all to hear. This girl spellbound our king. Can't you feel it? Look at him, different since her arrival. The power he answers to now isn't his own. A murmur rippled through the crowd gathering along the courtyard edges. Warriors. Council members. Even servants, watching from behind pillars. She has bewitched him. Ren spat. Corrupted his blood. She burns with unnatural flame. That's not a wolf, it's something else. Elira's fists clenched. She stepped forward. But the alpha's hand caught her wrist. Not roughly, but a silent plea. Not yet. Not like this. But Ren saw the hesitation and pressed harder. Let us test her. Let her shift, here, before us all. If she truly belongs to this world, let the moon guide her. Or does she still fail at what every child in our bloodline learns by 5? The air thickened. All eyes turned to her. To her hands. To the tension in her shoulders. She didn't move. Because she couldn't. She didn't have control. Not like that. Not yet. And the fear. The one she thought she buried in the grove, rose like bile. She was going to fail again. And this time, it wouldn't be whispers or exile. It would be death. Ren smiled, sensing it. You see? Even now she draws power from nothing. It pulses around her like sickness. She is not of us. And then, he stepped forward. Too close. His hand rose, not to strike, but to grab her arm. That was a mistake. Because the moment his fingers brushed her, everything snapped. She didn't mean to let go. But she did. The fire exploded from her chest. Not red. Not orange. Silver. It burst out in a violent ring, sending Ren flying backward, crashing through the outer wall. Stone shattered. Wolves growled. Blades hissed from sheaths. Elira stood there, trembling, her eyes wide in shock, her breath ragged. Smoke curled from her fingers. She's dangerous, someone shouted from the upper tier. No, the alpha said, stepping forward. She's waking up. But it didn't matter. The fear had taken root. The whispers had begun. They rippled through the sanctuary like wildfire. Words half-spoken but laced with venom. Witch. Flameborn. She'll burn us all. She doesn't even shift, what is she? The council arrived at sundown. Their robes were black, trimmed with white, the old laws, stitched in fabric. Their faces were unreadable. Their power was not. The lead elder stepped forward, ancient eyes settling on the alpha. We've come for the girl. He didn't move. She is under my protection. She is a threat to the order. She is a child of the old blood, she is not a child, the elder hissed. She is a spark with no discipline. A storm that strikes without warning. If she burns the wrong village, will you still claim her? The alpha stood taller. She's mine to guide. Then you will fall with her. The silence that followed was absolute. No birds. No wind. Not even the fire dared to crackle. Elira looked around, and what hurt most wasn't the fear in their eyes. It was the doubt. Even among the ones who hadn't turned on her, there was distance now. A step back. A glance too long. The alpha noticed it too. And he made his choice. He reached for her hand. Gripped it tight. She stays. A gasp rippled. The elder's voice lowered. Then so be it. But know this, Alpha, when she falls, your crown will fall with her. The council turned. Left. But the damage didn't. It stayed. It bled into the halls. It filled the silence between footsteps. And long after the courtyard had emptied, long after the broken wall had been repaired and Ren dragged back by his men, the whispers remained. And some of them weren't whispers anymore. They were prayers. Let the flame die. The lake was silver under the moon. Not from reflection, but from something else entirely, something older. The water didn't just shimmer, it glowed. Faintly. Softly. Like it remembered things it had no words for. Like it had seen gods rise and fall and kept their secrets buried beneath its still surface. Elira knelt at its edge. The ripples she made felt like sins. She dipped her hands in first, wincing as cold licked into open cuts. Her arms were scraped raw, red lines crossing each other like a map to nowhere. Her face stung from a fresh bruise, but she didn't touch it. She just watched the blood drift off her knuckles, curl into the moonlight, then disappear. Her reflection stared back. Eyes dark with exhaustion. Hair tangled, wild. Skin smudged with ash and memory. She looked like someone who'd just survived a battle. But the truth whispered quieter. She looked like someone who was still waiting to die. The leaves rustled behind her. But she didn't flinch. She felt him before she heard him. The Alpha stepped into the clearing, his presence soft for once. Not the sharp blade of command, but the quiet weight of someone who knew how much silence could hurt when shared. He didn't speak right away. Just knelt a few feet from her, unwrapped the leather cloth he carried, and held it out. Meat. Roasted. Still warm. She blinked at it. He met her gaze. I hunted this for you. Simple words. But she understood what they cost. This wasn't a gesture made out of obligation. It wasn't about survival. It was care. She took it. And he didn't move until she took a bite. The silence between them changed then. Not empty. Not aching. Just present. He sat beside her, close enough to feel the warmth from her skin. The lake reflected them both now, two ghosts in the water. Two ruins still breathing. She didn't speak. But he did. I was cast out too, he said. His voice was low, almost distant. Like he wasn't sure if the words were meant for her, or if he'd been carrying them too long not to speak them aloud. They say my blood is too wild. That I feel too much. That I ask too many questions. I did things I wasn't supposed to. Disobeyed laws written by cowards. I refused the bond they chose for me. He paused. Then looked at her. Not seeking pity. Just truth. She died in the war, he said. My mate. Elira turned her face slightly, listening. I wasn't there. I should have been. I knew the battle was coming, but I was away. Trying to stop it from happening. Trying to speak to the council. Trying to negotiate. He closed his eyes. And for the first time since she'd met him, he looked undone. I failed. His hands flexed, then stilled again. I blamed myself. 4 years. I still do. Elira didn't speak right away. Not because she didn't know what to say. But because words were too easy. And nothing about this moment deserved ease. I hear voices in the flames, she said finally. He looked up. She didn't meet his eyes. I try to sleep, and I see fire. I see them, elders, mothers, strangers, screaming. I see wolves I've never met dying. And always the same voice calling me toward it. Like it wants me to burn too. He didn't interrupt. She swallowed. I think the fire is alive inside me. But it doesn't belong to me. I'm just holding it. Barely. Like if I stop trying for 1 second, it'll consume everything. For a long time, neither of them moved. Then, come with me, he said. She frowned. Where? He stood, extended a hand. Just, trust me. Something in his tone softened the knot inside her chest. She hesitated. Then placed her hand in his. The trees opened around them. Not because they moved. But because they were moved, by some unseen force that responded to him. Or to her. She couldn't tell anymore. They walked barefoot through the grass until they reached a clearing. Wide. Open. Lit by stars that seemed impossibly close. There was no sound but wind. And heartbeats. He turned to her. No words. No pretense. Just an open palm. And she stepped into it. He drew her close, slowly, cautiously. Like she might disappear. Like she was made of ash. Her head rested against his chest. And they began to move. Not dance. Not quite. Just a slow, gentle sway to a rhythm only they could feel. The kind of motion that didn't need music, because it was music. Their breath. The wind. The pulse of the world under their feet. His hand rested against her waist. Hers at his shoulder. Their bodies found something they'd never been taught, safety, maybe. Or recognition. His voice broke the quiet. Sometimes I wonder if we're broken, he whispered. She looked up. But then I remember, he exhaled. Only the broken know how to hold others without shattering them. Her lips parted. But no sound came. Because something inside her shifted. Not physically. But deeper. The spark returned. Her chest heated. Her fingers tingled. Light danced at the edge of her vision. The air thickened. The trees breathed. And when their faces drew close, too close. His breath mingling with hers, their lips barely inches apart, the fire flared. Not just around them. But through them. The trees rippled. Leaves glowed silver. The grass bent as if pressed by wind that didn't exist. Her power surged. And she pulled back. Afraid. Gasping. I'm sorry, she whispered, clutching her arms. I can't, he touched her cheek. Warm. Grounded. No apologies, he said. Not for being more than what they let you be. Her voice cracked. You should walk away. I should, he agreed. But I won't. She shook her head. You don't know what I am. I know who you are. Her eyes shimmered. And in the quiet that followed, she said the one thing that mattered. I'll understand if you leave. And his answer, low and steady, was the only truth she needed. You think I came this far to walk away now? The moon hung low and swollen, casting a pale glow over the sanctuary grounds, drenching every stone and banner in white light. It was the kind of night meant for vows, for unity. A sacred ceremony that bound pack to purpose, alpha to kin, and wolves to the wild. Elira stood in the center of the ritual circle, ringed by fire that didn't burn. Dressed in ceremonial cloth, light gray, stitched with old runes she couldn't read, she felt like an echo. Present, but not fully there. A shape inside someone else's dream. The alpha stood beside her. Not touching her, but close enough that his warmth steadied her breathing. Around them, the pack chanted. The council watched in silence. A single white flame burned at the center altar, rising from a carved basin of black stone. It flickered with something more than heat. Memory. Magic. Something binding. She didn't understand the words spoken. But she understood the weight. This moment meant everything. And somewhere in her chest, deep in the space where doubt had once lived, a fragile thing began to stir. Maybe she could belong. The elder raised his staff. Step forward, he commanded, voice cracking with power. She did. The alpha moved with her. Then a voice broke the air. Clear. Familiar. And cold. She shouldn't be standing there. The crowd shifted. Heads turned. And Elira froze. It was Talia. A friend, once. One of the few wolves who had smiled when Elira first arrived, who'd brought her berries from the mountains, who had braided her hair in the mornings and whispered, "You're not alone." Talia now stood at the edge of the circle, eyes hard, hands shaking with fury barely hidden behind righteousness. "She doesn't belong here," Talia said. "Not with us. Not at the center." Elira's stomach sank. "What are you doing?" Talia stepped closer, holding something in her hand. A piece of parchment. Old. Torn at the edges. She held it up high. This, she said, voice carrying across the courtyard, is from the old bloodline archives. From the Eastern tribe, the ones we do not speak of. The line that broke the truce, the line that summoned fire from the ground. The line that was banished. She turned toward the elders. Elira bears the same mark. She is their daughter. The words hit like stones. Not just to Elira, but to the crowd. Gasps. Mutters. Sharp, biting silence. The Alpha turned, slow and stunned, eyes falling to Elira's wrist. The cloth had slipped. The mark was visible now, curved like a crescent, shaped like a flame biting through a ring of teeth. His jaw tensed. He didn't speak. He didn't step away. But he didn't step forward, either. And that was enough. Enough for Elira to feel the betrayal bleed into her bones. You knew, she whispered, voice cracking. The Alpha looked torn, guilt and fury warring in his face. You saw the mark. You knew. She turned to Talia. You were my friend. Talia's mouth curled. I was your shield. Until I saw what you were. The elder staff cracked against the stone. The prophecy warned us, he barked. When Fong and Flame collide, ruin will rise. She isn't balance, she's destruction. Another voice joined, she'll burn our future. She doesn't shift like us. She bends the flame. Controls it. No one controls the flame, it devours. The accusations built, crescendoed, became a roar. Elira stood there, the center of it all, the eye of a storm she didn't summon, but couldn't escape. The flame in the basin flared, wild and sudden, as if it heard them, as if it answered their fear with fury. Silver fire burst upward. Exploded. The ground cracked. The altar split. Wolves staggered back. Cries of panic rose. And Elira? She stood in the center. Unburnt. Untouched. Surrounded by ruin. Her hands trembled. Her throat closed. She turned to the Alpha one last time. His eyes, those eyes that had held her hand, that had promised without words, looked afraid. Not of them. Of her. And that was the final wound. The one that couldn't heal. She took a step back. Then another. No, she whispered. No. I won't do this again. They were shouting now, calling for her to be restrained, subdued, taken. The Alpha stepped forward. Too late. She turned. And ran. Through the broken altar, past the fire, into the woods beyond the sanctuary walls. She didn't shift. She didn't scream. She just ran. Branches tore at her arms, wind screamed in her ears, the forest swallowed her whole. But nothing hurt more than what she carried inside. His silence. Their betrayal. The truth written in flames. She was never going to be enough. Not for them. Not for him. Not for a world that saw her power and cowered instead of understanding. The tears came then. Silent. Hot. Endless. And the flame inside her? It didn't flicker this time. It raged. The valley split open like a wound. Darkness poured in. Not the kind made by night, but something worse. Heavier. Thicker. A presence, not a shadow. Like rage had learned how to walk, how to breathe, how to hunt. They came without warning. No war cry. No banners. Just silence. Then shapes. Too many to count. Crawling down the cliffs. Pouring from the woods. Long-limbed beasts with eyes that glowed red, but never blinked. Their bodies were not furred or skinned, just black mist shaped into flesh, oozing from bone to claw to fang. Shadow beasts. Born from curses. Fed on fear. Forged in the old magic, Before the moon had its first wolf, before flame had a name. The packs were not ready. They never had been. The outer guard fell first. Screams split the air like lightning, torn and raw. Soldiers vanished into the dark. The crystal-ruined walls flared and flickered, trying to hold back the horde. And at the center of it all, in the highest tower of the sanctuary, the council, those who had cast her out, were begging. Where is the girl? She was meant to stop this. The prophecy, she's the flame. Where is Elira? The Alpha stood in the war chamber, jaw clenched, fists bloodied. His guards looked to him for answers. But he had none. Because she was gone. He'd watched her run into the night. And he hadn't followed. Now the world bled for it. Far from the sanctuary, beneath the canopy of the oldest forest, Elira knelt in silence. Barefoot. Eyes closed. Palms on the earth. She hadn't slept. She hadn't eaten. She hadn't cried since the altar. There was no time left for breaking. Only burning. The clearing around her pulsed with energy, low, ancient, alive. The trees curved toward her, their trunks glowing faintly with marks only she could read now. The soil steamed beneath her. Not from heat. From memory. Voices whispered through the roots. Not hallucinations. Ancestors. They did not speak in sentences. They sang. They murmured in wind and leaves and the low crack of distant fire. You were never meant to be tamed. You are not their weapon. You are not their warning. You are what comes after. Elira's fingers curled into the soil. She felt the power rising, not crawling, not forcing, but opening, like breath drawn after drowning. Her spine arched. Her body shook. But this time, she didn't resist. She welcomed it. Flames bloomed from her skin, not to harm, but to reveal. The fire wasn't separate from her anymore. It wasn't wild or dangerous. It was her. And she was done hiding. Back in the valley, the walls were falling. Wolves fought tooth to claw, but the shadow beasts were endless. Each one that fell turned to mist, and that mist fed the next. Even the Alpha was losing ground, back to back with his last surviving captains, bleeding from 3 wounds, his voice hoarse from shouting. And still, someone cried out, she could stop this. Where is she? Then. The air shifted. The wind stopped. A pulse rippled through the ground, deep as thunder, quiet as a heartbeat. The shadows paused. Even the beasts hesitated. And from the tree lean, through the mist, through the smoke, through the ruin, she came. Barefoot. Dressed in torn cloth, blackened by soot. Eyes glowing. Not gold. Not blue. Silver. Bright as lightning. Alive as truth. Each step she took left a trail of fire behind her, not red. Not orange. Silver white. Alive. And the beasts backed away. They bowed. Their snarling ceased. Their forms shifted, trembled. Some turned to vapor. Others crouched, heads low. Because they remembered. Not her. But what lived inside her. The oldest flame. The first spark. She walked into the center of the field, toward the Alpha, toward the council, toward the dying. And they stared. Every last one of them. As if witnessing a god crawl out of a grave. The Alpha dropped his sword. Elira, she didn't look at him. Not yet. She turned to the beasts. Spoke words no one understood. But they obeyed. They bent their heads. They turned. They left. No war. No bargain. No spell. Just her. And then, the world shifted. The mountains trembled. Crystals buried in the cliffs erupted in light. Runes flared to life. Trees groaned as if waking from centuries of slumber. The moon turned blood white, then silver again. Time bent. Not forward. Not back. Inward. As if the world itself was holding its breath for her. The silence after was deafening. Not a soul moved. Then, Elira turned to the council. You wanted a weapon, she said, voice echoing through the hollow air. But I am not your sacrifice. Her gaze fell to the Alpha. He didn't speak. Didn't plead. Just dropped to one knee. She looked at him. For a moment, only silence stretched between them. Then she said, Lo, I don't know what we are anymore. His answer was breathless. But I do. She closed her eyes. And when she opened them again, the flame within her didn't flicker. It burned. Behind her, in the tree-line, something moved. A whisper on the wind. A voice from nowhere, or maybe from the world itself, she is only the beginning. The wind had stilled. Ash drifted through the air, weightless and silver, floating down in slow spirals as if time had loosened its grip. The valley, once alive with war and screams and fear, now lay quiet, hollowed out. Burnt. Changed. The ground still trembled beneath it all. Not from threat, but from memory. As if the land itself hadn't decided what to feel yet. Grief? Relief? Awe? And in the center of that silence, Elira stood. Alone. The others had stepped back, some out of reverence, others out of fear. No one dared cross the line the fire had drawn around her. Not even the Alpha. Not even now. Her hands hung at her sides, fingers streaked with soot, blood, and something else, something ancient. Her chest rose and fell slowly, as if relearning how to breathe in a world she no longer trusted. A world that had finally seen her. Entirely. Her shoulders were squared, but not in defiance. Indecision. Her eyes glistened. But she didn't cry. Because the tears weren't for sorrow. They were for release. For truth. For everything she had carried that no one saw, until now. The scars. The silence. The shame. The rage. The power. They wanted a weapon. She became a storm. She looked at them all, every wolf, every elder, every witness who had once called her wrong, cursed, dangerous, and she did not flinch. She stood. The Alpha looked on, his chest tight, his eyes holding a grief he didn't yet know how to name. Because this was no longer his story. It never had been. She stepped forward, through the circle of scorched earth, past the cracked altar where they once meant to crown her, or kill her. And she did not speak to them. She spoke to us. To whoever was watching. To whoever might one day stand where she stood, with fire in their blood and doubt in their bones, begging to be anything but alone. Her voice was quiet. But it carried. They tried to erase me before they understood me. A pause. I let them write my story in fear. A longer pause. Then. Stronger, but I've seen the truth. A breath. They wanted control. What they got was awakening. The moon passed behind a cloud. Darkness pressed close. And then, her voice again, softer now. Almost a whisper. I'm not sorry for what I am. She looked at her hands. At the fire that flickered, soft now, obedient only because she allowed it. Then toward the sky, where no gods waited, only stars. I was never meant to be chosen by them, she said. I was born to choose myself. The last ember fell. And everything was still. Then, a voice. Not hers. Not the Alpha's. But something deeper. A voice that belongs to all of us. To those who have been burned for shining too bright. To those who have swallowed their own fire just to survive. To those who stand at the edge and ask, what happens if I step forward anyway? Studio microphone voiceover, would you have chosen her, or feared her too? Is she the hero, or just a girl cursed with too much fire? The question hangs there, raw and unfinished. No answer. Because the truth? The truth is this: she's not just the prophecy. Not just the flame. She is the question we never dared to ask. And the answer we were never ready to hear. Studio Microphone Poetic CTA, if this story lit something inside you. If something in her fire felt familiar. If you, too, have ever stood alone in your own ashes, then stay. Because here, we tell tales that burn. Subscribe to the Alpha's Romance Library. And remember, this is only the beginning. The fires had gone out. But their memory remained. Ash coated the ground in soft drifts, like snowfall born of war. The valley, hollowed and broken, had fallen silent, not in peace, but in pause. The kind of quiet that comes not after the end, but just before the next beginning. Elira stood at the edge of the battlefield, her shoulders drawn back, her chin lifted. The weight of the world no longer rested on her. It followed behind her now, like a storm obeying the tide. The Alpha approached slowly. No crown. No armor. Just a man. Not broken, but undone. Unmade in the places where power once hardened him. And still, he reached for her. She didn't pull away. Their fingers met, fit together, not like a promise, but like a choice. Together, they turned from the ruins. Not toward a home. Not toward safety. Toward whatever came next. Hand in hand, they stepped into the woods. And behind them, the trees stirred. Not from wind. From awareness. The leaves trembled. Bark split. Roots shuddered in the earth. Not in fear. In recognition. They knew her now. And they knew what followed in her wake. Far behind, where mist had begun to roll low across the scorched ground, a shape emerged. It did not walk. It did not breathe. It arrived. A figure, cloaked in fabric that shimmered like oil, hood drawn low, face swallowed in darkness. It did not step over the ashes. It floated, as if untouched by the ruin all around it. Its presence didn't disturb the fog. It commanded it. Its hands remained hidden. But its voice, low. Male. Ageless. Soft as smoke curling around a throat. The fire chose her. A pause. A shift in the mist. But the throne has not. Another step forward. Closer now. Where Elira's footprints still glowed faintly, silver in the ash. The figure crouched. Ran a single gloved finger through the still-warm ground. She thinks the worst is behind her. A breath. Almost a laugh. But the true Alpha hasn't risen, yet. The fog swallowed him again. And this time, the trees didn't whisper. They watched. Somewhere, far beyond the woods, a star flickered out. A river froze for a moment too long. A mother woke from a dream she would never remember but never forget. And the world, as it had done once before, began to shift, not loudly. Not all at once. But like breath drawn in secret. Because endings are only endings when no one survives to carry the story forward. And Elira? Elira survived. Which means the story has just begun.